All right, we are continuing on the subject of temptation, and we just start once again in James chapter 1 and verse 13. Let no one say when he is tempted, I am tempted by God, for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he himself tempt anyone. We also have in chapter 4 in verse 7, therefore, here we go, therefore submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. So here are the assurances. One, that we will be tempted. Number two, God is never going to tempt us. Number three, that it will be Satan doing it, but Satan can be defeated. That if all we have to do is just resist. That there is never, we will never be presented with anything where it's either sin or it's either wrong or wrong. We'll never be presented with that. We'll never be presented with something, a situation where we can only do one thing, if there is only one choice and the choice is wrong. We will never be presented with that there's always a way of escape, and we will discuss that in time. But there is always a way of escape. Now, if we go to, and matter of fact, this is going to be discussing it, Genesis chapter 4. We're going to the first family of the world, the first family of humanity. And we'll begin in verse 1. So Genesis 4, verse 1, now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain and said, I have acquired a man from the Lord. Then she bore again, this time his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in the process of time, so time has passed, they grew up. It came to pass that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat, and the Lord respected Abel and his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his offering, and Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. So, we have two brothers. They are both worshiping God. That's the intent. One is worshiping according to the truth, according to the way God has obviously asked them to. They didn't just get to make this up on their own, because clearly God accepts Abel's offering and rejects Cain's offering. And it wasn't up to them to decide what they were, how God was supposed to be worshiped. Now, it was up to them to decide if they were going to do it or not, if they were going to worship him according to his precepts, according to how he wants to be worshiped. But we see this in verse 6. So the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry, and why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. Now, when God says this to Cain, it's very reasonable and rational. It's just calmly speaking this out. If you do well, you will be accepted. So it starts off with this word if, which means this is potential. You can do this if you want to. If you decide, it's up to Cain whether Cain's going to do it or not. If you do well, will you not be accepted? So he can do well, and when he does, if he does, he will be accepted. It all comes together. But he also says this, and if you do not do well, so here's potential again. You have the right to choose. If you do not do well, sin lies at the door. So here is what Cain has been doing. When it says sin lies at the door, has he been sinning? Well, yes, of course he's been sinning. If he hadn't been sinning, then God would have respected Cain's offering. This is false worship, or we could call it vain worship. Did he believe in Jehovah? Cain. Did Cain believe in Jehovah? Yes. Did Was it his intent to worship Jehovah? Yes. Was he doing it according to how Jehovah told them he wanted to be worshiped? Obviously not. He wasn't doing that. So that would be sin. But this sin lies at the door means that you're opening this door up, and sin is just going to continue on in. Notice, if you do not do well, that describes sin. That's a continuation of sin. If you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and here it is, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. Its desire is for you. Now, this kind of takes sin and puts a persona to sin, like sin is an actual creature lying at the door. Its desire is for you. It's personification of sin. And it's a great way to envision this. It's at the door, and you just keep opening the door. You could rule over it. And that's what he's saying. You have the power. All the way in Genesis chapter 4, we have the concept. Already in Genesis chapter 3, we've had the concept of that we have free moral agency. We have free will. We can decide to obey God or not obey God. We have that ability. That is part of our makeup. And now we're in Genesis chapter 4. We're out of the Garden of Eden now. There is an issue with Cain. God speaks to Cain, and he's telling Cain that you can rule over this. You can rule over this. That there is nothing about this that you cannot maintain, because you can. And as we have said, if you can't control yourself, you can't control anything. Because you are the only thing you can control. You can't control your future, what the future holds for you. You can't control other people, as much as some may try. You can't control other people. You can't control, if you can't control yourself, you really can't control anything. You are the only thing in your control. You are it. And this is precisely what was expected out of Cain. Abel was doing it. So could Cain. Now, who else was alive? Well, we do know by name Adam and Eve were both alive. And they obviously sinned. That's why no one was in the Garden of Eden. But all of this is under our control, which is precisely the point in all this, that God is telling him of the potential that is here, and that things could, if you do not do well, things will get progressively worse. Okay? Have you, at this point in time with Cain, had he ever thought about killing his brother? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. Maybe, maybe not. If he hadn't, he's about to. If he has been thinking about killing his brother, well, it's going to go from thought to action. He's actually going to do it. All right? That is sin. That is desire for Cain. He keeps that sin coming in, and there's just going to be a progression of things, or a digression of things getting worse and worse. Now, let's just flip over to chapter 3. We went through chapter 3 slowly a few weeks ago, but I really just want to look at this. So we want to look at points of temptation. We've already looked at how Christ dealt with temptation in Matthew chapter 4, also Matthew chapter 16. But now we want to just look at this once again, but just in verse 6. This concerns when Eve, she has already been deceived by the serpent. She is standing in front of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, judging what she's going to do. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and we spoke about this, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. She also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. So here she is at the very edge of moral decision. Is she going to take of the tree and eat it, or is she just going to walk away? Which is it? She is judging this, which means, in my mind, that there is hesitation. Perhaps there is hesitation, but she's judging it. She's judging it. That, and the first two things would be, as we spoke a few weeks ago, would be intrinsically true. Was it edible? That is, good for food. Now, should she eat it? No. But will it kill you physically like hemlock, like some poison? No, it won't do that. No, this fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, it is, in fact, edible. It is edible. It is just forbidden. And God already told them to stay away from it. He already told them. And this is a simple test. Like we were saying a few weeks ago, everything in the Garden of Eden is very low scale. Everything about it is low scale. There's at this moment, there is no law concerning murder because it's just Adam and Eve. There's no law about theft. There's no law about love of neighbor. These have not been presented. Now, they've been from eternity, yes, but they haven't been presented to mankind yet. But there is a moral obligation from humanity to God to obey God in all things. It is a moral obligation. And so, it's good for food. It's pleasant to the eyes. That would be intrinsically true. That this would be something that looked pleasant enough. It looked edible. I guess it smelled edible. Maybe it had an odor. And here it is pleasant. But this third one is, well, it's following the deception. And desirable to make one wise. Now, that's not intrinsically true. I've never looked at a piece of food ever and said, oh, that's desirable to make one wise. I've never done that. But if someone were to deceive me and say, if you were to eat, just fill in the blank, whatever, corn or beef jerky, whatever, and said this will make you wise, then if I follow that deception, then okay, it looks like something that's desirable to make one wise. Well, she is following this deception, and so she takes it and she eats it. And when that happens, sin has just entered the world. When God tells us we must do something and we don't, that is sin. God didn't create that sin. God is not the creator of sin. He's not the creator of evil. But does he have laws? Yes. For humanity? Yes. For angelic beings? Yeah. Yeah. They're not told to stay away. They don't eat anything anyway, as far as I know. But they're not told to stay away from the tree, as far as I know. But humanity was. Adam and Eve were. And so we're under this law, and when Adam and Eve ate, then sin entered into the world and everything changed.
Okay, we need to remember that Satan began with doubt.
Yes.
Before he does the negating, the command,
Yeah.
he starts with doubt.
Yes, that's correct. Satan, or the serpent, and it's Satan. We know it is because Revelation chapter 12 tells us that this is Satan. If we didn't quite get it, yes, it is Satan. Satan started with doubt. Has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree that's in the garden? There's that questioning. And I've heard this tone so many times in my life, not from the serpent, but from other people. And it's a tone of, is it possible that God actually said? Is this true that God said this? And as we discussed several weeks ago, well, where did he get this information? Where did the serpent get this information? Because there's Adam, there's Eve, there's God, and there's the serpent. Okay. And the serpent is like, did God actually say? Well, who you been listening to? Okay. Because if you heard God, you would know it's true. And who else has been talking around here? Like there's some kind of grapevine in the Garden of Eden, as in a rumor mill, and everyone's kind of whispering around. It finally got to the serpent, and I can't believe he said that. Well, there is none of that. There is none of that. And it clearly, now she doesn't know, Eve doesn't know, she's never been deceived before. As we, I think, said a number of weeks ago, by age 5, we've been lied to by age 5. Some older sibling, some other child, we have the concept of lies. We have that concept that we can be lied to, that someone can tell us something that isn't true. And but Eve didn't. Eve didn't have that concept. And so here's this beginning of undermining her faith in God completely. Now, what would be the thing for Eve and for Adam to do? Before we get to verse 6, what would be the thing for Adam and Eve to do at that point? It would be to go and ask God what he said and why he said it. Have a discussion with him. But Satan designed this in such a way as to discourage anyone from doing that, because he's saying that God is evil and God is lying to you, and God has a purpose. He has a motive to keep you, a reason to keep you away from this fruit. Verse 5, for God knows, this is Satan speaking, the serpent speaking, for God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. Okay, so this is evil intent on his part, just holding them back. They're never going to reach their full potential. They could be like God, knowing good and evil. Hey, that's great. I can just imagine hearing those first few words. We can be like God, knowing good and evil. All right, we can be like him. Therefore, this is truly undermining their faith, because they're not going to go to God to ask him about anything, any of this. They're not going to. Because it means he's just going to lie more to them if he's been lying. And that's the whole thing. Who here is lying? Your Creator or something else in the Garden of Eden? Who's lying? Okay, and if our Creator is lying, you got a big problem. And no matter of eating from this tree is going to solve that problem. It's not going to solve that problem at all. There's nothing you can do to solve that problem. If our Creator is lying to us, we are in a serious, we have a serious situation that really cannot be resolved. But our point in all this is, what should they be doing? One, questioning Satan or the serpent. Questioning, did he get it right? Number two, and that doesn't mean asking, well, you could interrogate the serpent, but then you go see what God has to say about it. Now, today, he's not going to just walk with us in the cool of the day. And we can have discussions with him, or like he did with Cain, of speaking to Cain directly. He's not going to do that. for us, because he doesn't have to. We have more than Adam and Eve. We have more than Cain. We have more than Moses. We have more than, name the prophets. We have more than they do. We have everything we need. Everything. And I think we made mention of this, 2 Timothy 3:17, all Scripture is, 16 and 17, all Scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be thoroughly equipped, thoroughly furnished, equipped for every good work. Perfectly furnished, perfectly equipped for every good work. Profitable for doctrine, okay? Reproof, that's correcting someone. And for every good work means that we can, in fact, go through every problem and have the information we need to get through that problem. Go through every temptation to have the information we need to get through that temptation. We can do that. Now, let's go to 2 Samuel. 2 Samuel chapter 11. And this is the beginnings of David's problem. And it is going to affect his life, the life of his entire family. It's going to infect his family. It is going to be a problem for Israel, and it's not going to be just this little sin between two people. It's not going to be that. It is going to be devastating. Now, we just began in verse 1. So 2 Samuel chapter 11, verse 1, it happened in the spring of the year, at the time when the kings go out to battle, that David and Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they destroyed the people of Ammon and besieged Rabbah, but David remained at Jerusalem. So there's war going on. David still at home. Nothing wrong with that. He's the king. The king doesn't have to be out in the front. Matter of fact, sometimes it's wise, as he gets older, they're going to refuse to let him go out in the front. They're going to refuse to let him be in these places. But that's not his problem. Verse 2, then it happened one evening that David rose from his bed and walked on the roof of the king's house. Is there a problem with this? No. This is just an innocent sort of thing, as far as I know. Because it doesn't say that he was some kind of voyeur and just seeing what he could see in the night. He just can't sleep. So he goes up on top of the roof of the king's house. And the houses there in Jerusalem had flat roofs, and with walls. And you could, it's kind of like the way we consider our backyard. It was a private area, unless someone's house was taller than yours and they could look down, which obviously is the case. Someone's house is higher on a hill or whatever. So he goes on top of the roof, and from the roof he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful to behold. This is an accident. From this point, it's not what was intended to happen. I don't think Bathsheba, this is who this is. He's going to find out in the next verse. This is Bathsheba. She's not there. I don't think, it doesn't say in the text, that she's there to attract the attention of the king. She doesn't know he's going to be up on the roof. She doesn't. She has no idea that's going to happen. But David goes up there, and now there is a decision that must be made. A decision to either continue on in innocence, which thus far he is, and being a good king, which thus far he is, or go down this path that's going to lead to a lot of tears. It's going to lead to the death of actually two sons in this. One is the child between David and Bathsheba. That child is going to die. But also it's going to lead to the death of Absalom. But there's also another son that dies because Absalom kills him. There's this violence that's going to be in David's house. The sword will not depart from his house because of what is going to occur. Here is just this incident that could have just remained and just this accidental incident. Okay, it's time to get off the roof. And we're not going to inquire of who this is. Now, my first question in all this is, how many wives does David have at this moment? At this moment, he's got more than I have. Okay. And one, polygamy never works. Never. And why is he sleeping alone? That is my question. Why is he sleeping alone in his palace when he has multiple wives? Why is he doing that? And the obvious answer, I think, is that polygamy never works. That was not the design. And as we can see time and time and time again, that and one would think that surely someone would have, and of course they did. Not every man was a polygamist. That's for sure. Uriah the Hittite was not, and there would be plenty of others that were not. But among some, they would marry multiple wives. But here is what he doesn't realize is where he happens to be at this point. And you don't have to go there, I'm just going to read again what God said to Cain, because it's very vital what he says. If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. You should rule over it. Now, it would be easy for David just to say, all right, I'm going back in the house. I'm going back downstairs. And let that be that. It would be perfect for him to decide, all right, I'm going to go and get in bed with one of my own wives. It'd be perfect for him to say that. No problem whatsoever. But he doesn't. Sin was at the door, and it's going to affect him and so many other people. There's going to be a lot of people that die because of this. Uriah the Hittite, who is Bathsheba's husband, he's going to die. There are going to be others who are going to die along with Uriah the Hittite to make it not look like it's murder. But that's exactly what it is. And so what occurs? So David, verse 3, so we're back at 2 Samuel 11, verse 3. So David sent and inquired about the woman, and someone said, is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? Okay, nothing wrong yet, but you're entertaining things. You're entertaining. This would be one of those moments of, all right, this is a tree good for food, and a tree that the fruit sure looks beautiful and desirable to make one wise, I suppose. Desirable, that's for sure. But it's time. All right, you don't need to go any further. But verse 4, then David sent messengers and took her, and she came to him, and he lay with her, for she was cleansed from her impurity, and she returned to her house. Okay, so here is what occurred. What should David have done? What should he have done? We've already spoken of, his options, but this is a turning point for his reign. Truly, after this point, David can't be trusted as he used to be trusted. He broke that trust. Truly, he's not the man that he had been prior to this. A man that was just, a man that was righteous king. But this occurs, and here is this toying about with sin, and you cannot play with fire and not get terribly burned. And here's the next thing: other people are going to get burned too. And that's one of the things to remember with this is, there are certain things we can do, and we can destroy our lives, and we can also destroy the lives of people we truly love and care about. We can do that, and bringing in this kind of poison, and it's not, Bathsheba didn't go inquire about him. She didn't send messengers to him, but she is part of this, and but David is the one that initiated all this. He's the one that started it, and this is going to affect so many things. Now, let's go to John chapter 12. John 12. Now we speak of Judas. Judas is one that, going back to those words that God gave to Cain, if you do well, will you not be accepted? If you do not do well, sin lies at the door, but you should rule over it. All right, he wasn't ruling over sin. Sin was ruling over him because he made a home for sin. And we look at John 12 and we go to, let's just read, because we may be wondering, well, what was this all about anyway? So we'll begin in verse 1, John 12, verse 1. Then 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, who had been dead, whom he had raised from the dead. There they made a supper, and Martha served, but Lazarus was one of those who sat at the table with him. Then Mary took a pound of very costly oil of spikenard, anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, who would betray him, said, "Why was this fragrant oil not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" Verse 6. This he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief, and he had the money box, and he used to take what was put in it. He didn't care anything about the poor. All he's doing is using this as an occasion to complain about somebody that's doing good, complaining about a good act, because Jesus says, "Let her alone, she has kept this day for my burial. For the poor you have with you always." If you want to do good to the poor, great. Do it. And you're going to have the rest of your life to do it. Well, for Judas, it's not going to be much longer. You have the rest of your life to do it. But me, you do not have always. If that's what you want to do, you go do it. But don't complain about her. Because all this is try to make her feel guilty, try to manipulate not just her, but others who may think, well, I would have done this, but as for Jesus, but I guess we need to sell this and put it in the money box, and then Judas can give it to the poor. Well, that's not what Judas had in mind at all. What he had in mind is anything that went into that money box became his, if he wanted it. And I'm sure that he would have played it safe enough to where no one would have, obviously no one suspected that he was doing it. But here's the thing in all of this, that you have a pattern of sin which he has. It says he was a thief. And this is what he'd been doing. And had the money box, and he used to take what was put in the box. What was put in it. All right, that is showing this is a pattern of sin. This is a pattern of behavior. It isn't just a one-time thing, and he decided he better not do that again. Hid it, perhaps, but decided he wasn't going to do it again. No, this was his behavior. This is his track record. This is what he was doing. Now, a pattern of sin can bring complacency. That's when it's ruling over you. A pattern of sin can bring in justifications in our own mind. I'm doing this because, and just fill in the blank. As long as it works, it works. Satan doesn't care why you're sinning. He doesn't care how you've justified it. He doesn't care at all. But the fact that we will justify it means that it makes it much easier for temptations to come around again, and we fall right into the same trap. We fall into the trap again and again and again and again. And as long as we're justifying it, as long as we're complacent about it, what else is going to happen? Until we come to a point, and once again, this is all according to personal will, to decide, all right, I've had enough. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm stopping. And there are certain sins that are much easier to stop than others. Sins that are new, that it's not a pattern of behavior, but it's something new, is something that's beginning to grow, and we can just stop it right there. That's when it's at its easiest. Stop it right there. It's just a small plant, small weed growing, and we can just take it out and toss it away. That's it. But with a pattern of behavior, it continues to grow and grow and grow until it's harder to get rid of that. And there are certain sins also that addictions, well, those are harder. Those are much harder. And there are a lot of addictions. And I don't mean just substance abuse. That's one of many. But there are sexual sins that become this being abused and becoming this pattern, and one just gets wrapped up in that and get caught in that, and it destroys your life while you continue in it. But it can be stopped. And if you can't control yourself, you can't control anything. Now, we can begin to make excuses. We can begin to think, yeah, it's bad if others do it, but not so bad if I do it, because, once again, just fill in the blank, whatever it is. I can make excuses. It's not really that bad. It's bad if somebody else did it, but not so bad because I'm doing it. And with this comes weakness and frailty in all this, and we just set aside the whole armor of God, and we make ourselves a target for the next temptation, an easy target. Now, we come to John chapter 13. John chapter 13, and let's go to verse 26. This is, Jesus and his disciples, they are here it's the Passover meal, and verse 26, Jesus answered, because he says that he's going to be betrayed by one of them. And they ask, Lord, who is it? Verse 26, Jesus answered, it is he to whom I shall give a piece of bread when I have dipped it. And having dipped the bread, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon. And we talked about this not too long ago, I guess when we were in the book of Mark, when we talked about this, that Jesus and Judas are the only ones in that room, only ones among men Okay, Jesus, Judas, and the high priest and the scribes. The powers that be, not Rome, they were the only ones who knew what was going to happen and who was going to do it. They knew it was Judas. Jesus knew it was Judas, and Judas knew it was Judas, and Judas knew that Jesus knew it was Judas. All right? And he gives this, he dips the bread, hands it to Judas. He gives it to him, Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon. Now after the piece of bread, Satan entered him. Then Jesus said to him, what you do, do quickly. Now notice the terms, and I'm going to make, I wouldn't make this distinction or emphasize this at all, really, of what I'm about to emphasize, except that I had a discussion not too long ago concerning this. What you do, do quickly. He doesn't tell him to do anything, except whatever his decision is, do it quickly. He doesn't tell him what he's got to do, except whatever Judas decides to do. What you do. Because I had a discussion with the fella, a man who said Jesus told him to do it and to do it quickly, giving an excuse for Judas, that Judas was in fact following the will of God. He wasn't. Jesus had already said that the one who would betray him, it would be better if he hadn't even been born. But he says, what you do, do it quickly. Do it quickly was the only command that he said. Now, could Judas then decide, could he decide that he's not going to do it? He's already made plans. It's already set. The price is set. How he's going to do it is set. And everything, the agreement has been done. But can he just say, no, I'm not going to do this? Yeah. Whatever you do could include not doing anything. It could include staying here in this room and you don't betray the Christ. It could mean that. But notice verse 27, now after the piece of bread, Satan entered him. Now that sounds like an easy thing for Satan to do. It was easy because Judas had already made a home for him. Judas made a home for Satan, for sin. Sin wasn't lying at the door anymore. Sin was inside because he's a thief. And he has been doing this for a while. And now when it comes time to it, just like Cain probably, and I'll just give this to Cain, Cain probably never imagined that he would kill his brother. Probably not. Now I said earlier, I entertained the thought, could he have? Yeah, he could have. But the likelihood is he never thought, my offering to God in the wrong way will lead me to murdering my brother. I doubt he ever put that together. But it was sin. Sin brought him to worshiping God in the wrong way. Sin also had command over Cain. Cain killed his brother. Sin temptation of sin brought Judas to stealing from the money box. And now he's about to betray the Messiah, the one who he has been following. Well, you know, it's an easy shift from one to the other. At least he does it. It's an easy shift. You've been stealing from the Messiah. Why not make some more money off the Messiah? 30 pieces of silver sounds pretty good. I really don't know how much that was, but that sounds good enough that we can make yet more money off the Messiah. Now, we are out of time at the moment. I would have preferred to have finished up with Judas, but we will continue next week. But I do want to say this, and we will say this next week too, because we have to, that when it says that Uh, I made my way into the wrong chapter. Hang on. No. Yep. I turned my page. No, I haven't. One of these days I'm going to get there. Okay, 37 is where I want to be. Nope. Okay. Verse 27. 27 is where I want to be. Now, after the piece of bread, Satan entered him. Okay? After the piece of bread, Satan entered him. That could sound like the one who received that piece of bread is the one, Satan knows who to enter now. That's the one. But that's not true. It's not true at all. As we will see from Luke 22, verses 3, well, particularly in verse 3, that Satan had already entered Judas. And we'll look at that. This is from Luke chapter 22 and verse 3, that Satan has already entered him, and it's before this even occurs, before this dinner is even set, that Judas has already made the agreement. Judas knows that Jesus is going to be going into Jerusalem. He knows he's going to be coming for the Passover. And Judas makes that deal, and Satan enters him then. All right. Appreciate everybody being with us. And we will continue this next week.